got a theist, Kevin in New York, wants to know if the hosts have complete knowledge of the Bible and whether they are versed enough to draw conclusions about it. Kevin, you are on with Mike and Matt. How you doing?
Hey, Matt. Hey, J-Mike. Thanks for taking my call. The reason why I proposed that question to the call screener is because it kind of leads into other questions that I have that I kind of think I have answers to, like, for example, whether or not you can tell whether someone is trying to expound the revelations of God or not.
Well, I can tell you right now that I definitely do not and never have had complete knowledge of the Bible. I just have more knowledge of it than probably most of the overwhelming majority of people who are sitting in a pew anywhere. However, I don't think complete knowledge of the Bible exists for anybody, and I don't think it's required to have complete knowledge of it to draw conclusions about it. But if you've got insight into something, I know that we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, and Kevin, real fast, if I can add, when you make a statement of having full knowledge, like let's suppose that one Christian claims that and another does, I'm willing to bet that they probably don't agree on parts, so I don't think we would be able to call it knowledge, especially in different interpretations. So I want to know even what you mean by that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. My mind's going in a whole bunch of different directions, but I guess you can sort of look at it philosophically, especially from Plato, in which I'm probably going to butcher the quote, but...
Do you have complete knowledge of Plato?
I'm sorry?
Do you have complete knowledge of Plato?
No. But it was a quote that resonated with me that says the highest form of knowledge can be formed from empathy, from the ability to step outside oneself, which is just an expression.
It sounds like a platitude.
Yeah.
Which I'm not all that interested in. So let me ask you this real quick, Kevin. Does anyone other than God have complete knowledge of anything, including the Bible?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So then why would you ask us if we have complete knowledge, if your view is that nobody but God has complete knowledge? And by the way, how would you ever be able to tell if someone had complete knowledge if you yourself don't?
That depends, because I also believe that God expresses himself through the individual in many different facets.
That doesn't remotely touch on what I asked. What I asked is, how could you, as someone who does not possess complete knowledge, ever know if anyone else had complete knowledge?
I wouldn't be able to.
Right, which also means that you cannot know that also means that you cannot know whether or not God has complete knowledge. You just believe that he does, but you can't know that.
That's true.
Okay, so let's toss out everything that was in the call screener, everything about having complete knowledge. What is it that you think you have some insight into that we need to benefit from?
Well, I know that you guys have heard to an exhaustive amount, so that, you don't understand this because you are not understanding it spiritually. But I only have two examples that I want to tell you very quickly. Like, for example, in the Bible, it says that people fall into error by understanding the law, but not the spirit of the law. And I know you can say that you don't know what that means exactly.
I don't really care what it means. It's just Kevin, you're just begging the question. You're just telling me about something that I already don't think is true, and telling me to listen to a part of that. And I kind of agree with the part you said. You guys aren't outside of yourself. I don't agree with the empathy part. Well, yeah, I agree with. Hold on. Let me finish. So the issue is that things I believe in, right? I use this example a lot. If I go look at a biology book and I'm like, oh, okay, allele frequencies change over time in a population. Well, that proves it. That would be faulty of me. I have to actually take myself outside of that. I need independent attestation. I need independent evidence. I need something to confirm it. I need to show how the novel predictions have actually done what they're supposed to do, right? And we can do that. We have things like the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. We can actually test certain factors and see whether or not evolution is occurring in a population. I don't need to read the biology book or have someone go, well, you need to read it this way and you need to understand it that way. It's very specific in the claim, and we can go test that. What can you do with that with the Bible?
Well, yeah.
I don't want appeals to my emotions or anything. I want actual independent attestation.
It doesn't really appeal to the emotions, because we can quickly imagine someone who falls under that category of all day, every day, who studies the law of the Bible, but doesn't come to a point to where it becomes a part of who they are. They don't live by it. The other example that I wanted to tell you.
No. I need to pause you, Kevin. You don't get to go on to a second example if we haven't understood or acknowledged or said something about the first one. I'm not sure I'm understanding what you're saying on the first one.
Yeah, it sounded like you didn't even answer my question. I'm asking you for what is independent. You're now going back to me and saying, well, if I read it this way, or if I understand it some way, I'm not understanding how that isn't evading the point.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm trying to understand what you guys are saying exactly, but
things that I believe in have independent evidence for it. I don't have to appeal to the way I read something. I don't have to appeal to just the book or just the claim itself. I have actual evidence to back up that claim. What you're telling me are just things that are claims. We're not getting anywhere, because this is no different than someone positing if I have to read the Quran a certain way, or if I have to understand someone's philosophical arguments for a necessary being, or you're not providing any independent attestation that's going to suit what I find in my epistemic reasoning, which is to back that up with something. You're just telling me to kind of go back to me on that.
When you say, here's what the Bible says, the first thing that pops into my head is, why should anybody care what the Bible has to say? I mean, it's not like it's a science book. It's not like it backs up its claims with evidence. And then when you go on further to suggest that perhaps we don't fully understand what the Bible has to say because we're not reading it with the Spirit of God or the God glasses or the emotive thing. And what J. Mike is saying is basically, hey, first of all, why should we care about the Bible? And can whatever you're saying, can you back that up with independent attestation, with evidence, with an argument? So if you could just summarize what the first point is, like in one sentence, then we might be able to ask the question that clarifies what the first point is.
Well, the claim is actually simply that the Bible is a revelation from God, in the sense that it transcends what humans would think as morality, for example.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't at all. First of all, saying the Bible's a revelation from God is something you need to prove, not just assert. But if your proof is that you think it transcends what humans would think, you are demonstrably wrong, because it echoes what humans thought throughout history, and it gets morality wrong all the time. Let me tract all the time. It frequently gets morality wrong, and it frequently makes statements that are exactly what you would expect from Bronze Age goat herders, without the advantage of, game theory, without the advantage of thousands of years of people thinking about these issues, and not the least of which is the notion that it doesn't treat women as equal to men. It allows for slavery and endorses that. It supports genocide. It doesn't want you to eat shellfish or wear mixed fabrics. It's willing, God's willing to kill people for picking up sticks on a Sabbath. It is a grossly immoral book. And the fact that you think that it transcends what humans think, it just shows how much you've sacrificed your own humanity on the altar of this idea. So prove that it's a revelation from God. But even if you could prove that it was a revelation from God, all that would prove is that God is an immoral thug that we shouldn't be listening to.
I'm sorry, man. I don't mean to attack you in any way, but I mean, I was listening to what you said. I don't claim to have complete knowledge, but a little bit more studied than the average Christian, in which that was one of the things that Jesus was sentenced to death for. which,
Okay, Kevin,
Jesus,
Kevin,
I mean,
Kevin,
one of
Kevin,
the most profound
Kevin,
things that
please
he's
stop.
ever said.
Kevin,
Yes.
please stop. Please stop for a second. I'd like you at some point to rewind and listen to what you just said. I countered your claim about it transcending human knowledge about morality. And what you said to me was that you don't mean to attack me, but you don't have complete knowledge, just a little bit more than others. There's no reason for me to consider any of that attack. And then you followed that up with, and that's what Jesus was killed for. You're not even listening to what I say. Shut up, Kevin. Shut up right fucking now and let me finish. You are not listening to what I say, and you are not responding to what either of us say. J. Mike asked questions that you ignored. I addressed your claim about the Bible being a revelation from God and being more moral, and you deflected to something completely irrelevant. What Jesus was killed for has nothing to do with anything I said. Are you going to answer the questions that you've been asked, or are we going to move on to a caller who will?
Yes, I'll answer the questions.
All right. So the first one was independent attestation or independent evidence for the claim. Don't go back to the Bible.
Something that's independent from the Bible?
Yes.
Because a lot of what I've heard you guys say is entirely.
You're not answering the question. Just answer it directly, please.
Well, there's philosophical points that can be deciphered from all this.
Yes, I get it. I get it. We can a priori assess things. I'm asking you for a posteriori, empirical evidence. I'm not asking about what you can think about in the armchair.
Empirical evidence is, I mean, we all live different lifestyles, but the ones that, for say, are given as an example in the Bible is
Stop talking, Kevin. What you just said is empirical evidence is we all live different lifestyles and what it says in the Bible. That's not a coherent sentence. It's not a cogent thought. It does not answer his question. It goes right back to the Bible after you were asked not to. And it demonstrates that you don't have the first clue what empirical evidence is, because you said empirical evidence is we all live different lifestyles. That has nothing to do with anything. I hate to do this, Kevin. You are incredibly confused. And even these most simple, straightforward questions, you reply with sentences that have no content of value.
What do you guys mean by... I know exactly what you guys mean by evidence.
I bet you $1 million you don't.
I feel like if you did, you would have at least given an attempt
That's exaggerated.
But when it comes to evidence, I also believe that the human experience is limited.
Kevin, you also believe the human experience is limited. You owe me $1 million, Kevin, and however long this call's been on, you owe me that much time too.
Yeah, you didn't even provide one thing. Like, go back and listen to the call. You didn't provide a single thing. You went back to the Bible and you went back to how people feel about stuff. If those are your standards of evidence about that, then I mean, you're going to draw very many conclusions about different metaphysical claims that I don't know how you're going to differentiate between the two without special pleading.
And neither of us are denying that human experience, I will flatly say, is valid, is reasonable to rely on to some extent, but we also know where human experience fails and why individual claims themselves are not evidence. But when you respond by saying you know exactly what we mean and that human experience is limited, you are once again uttering sentences that are not in any way a response to anything we've asked. And this is now a waste of time, Kevin.
I'm sorry. I really do believe that I'm using logic. But
okay, Kevin, do you know what else is limited? You know what else is limited? Science. Science is limited in a lot of ways, okay? But it still can provide basic, rudimentary predictions for things in the future. We can substantiate claims within it, or we have models that we can say, well, they're not necessarily substantiated, or this could go with the data that we have. we have similar issues of that, but that doesn't get in the way. Whereas what you're saying just goes to like, you throw your hands up almost. It's like you don't have anything to give. I don't know how you feel confident about the belief if you can't answer a simple question about I just know that if I believe in some claim like that, or really any claim I believe in, I can give you a reason why I believe it, and it won't go back to my emotions about it. It'll go about something that is independent of me even existing. If I died tomorrow or if I didn't live, does not affect it. And I don't feel like you are understanding the importance of that.
I do. I do, because I mean, I can't sit here and tell you guys that 100% of the Bible is a book of morals. Some of it's a story. But when it comes to things that we can then test and compare to real life things, it happens on an individual basis, in which, yes, we look at the Bible and, yeah, is this right or is this wrong? You know, I mean, we can come to the determination.
No. Here's your sentence. I typed it because I typed quickly. Here's your sentence. Part of it, as you stated it. When we test and compare to real life things, it happens on an individual basis. And yes, we look at the Bible. You don't know what empirical evidence is, and you don't know how to address any of these questions. You keep going back to the Bible and you keep uttering sentences that are not connected. If this were a syllogism, you don't have major and minor premises and a connecting point. You can't construct a syllogistic thought. You sit here and you say, you think that you're speaking logically. You're not. You're not even speaking coherently half the time. And that's very concerning, because it's like you start a thought and you move on to another thought. And I'm not trying to beat you up over it. I know plenty of people who do that, either because they're nervous, because they have some mental health condition, because they are stressed, or because maybe they've never had to face challenges on this. Maybe they're just used to people going along agreeing. It doesn't matter what the reason is. You are not speaking cogently about the subject. Like, for example, if I asked you, can you define empirical evidence?
Well, I don't know if you're going to take this as empirical evidence or not, man. But the things that
the answer is no.
From the Bible, things that I can add to myself and inform on how I live my everyday life, is the second example that I was trying to give to you, in which, say for the sake of argument, you can compare the life of a rich man compared to someone who lived in poverty. Now, to understand this spiritually, you can actually arrive at the conclusion that the person who lived in poverty lived a much richer life than someone who was financially rich, for example.
Okay, Kevin, we're done.
Yeah, this is
no, Kevin. Yeah. You did what you wanted to do, which you did. Shut up, Kevin.
You're muted, Kevin.
You did what you wanted to do, which is to get your second incoherent point out. But I'm done listening to any points from you at all. Because your second example was, you can compare the life of a rich man to someone in poverty, and to understand spiritually, you can understand the conclusion that the person in poverty lived a better life. No, that is all just you tossing out garbage. Yes, I can compare the life of a rich man to someone living in poverty. And when I compare those, I can find lots of similarities and lots of differences. And there's no guarantee that either of them is going to be morally superior or morally deficient. You are generalizing in a broad way. But when you say to understand spiritually, when you haven't defined what spiritual is or why we should care to understand it spiritually, that's also a failure. There's nothing more that I ever need to hear from you, Kevin, other than, hey, I've thought about this. I now am willing to define what empirical evidence is, and then either present empirical evidence or acknowledge that I didn't have any in the first place and that I was just duped like many other people.
Yeah, and I want to add real fast, Kevin, real fast. I want to add that everything that you had said previous to that, in the experience of life and how one person lives over the other. I've heard, I talk with a lot of spiritualists, like New Age spiritualists. There's nothing you said different that they don't plug in crystal or manifestation into, right? You're on a par with so many metaphysical claims on such like a very low standard. I'm gonna drop the call, Kevin. I want you to go back and listen to it, because there's a lot of things I feel like it should not be as difficult for you to conjure up some empirical evidence if you believe the claim is true. If
or
you
to
can't
define it.
or to define it. I would just call back and listen back to that, because otherwise we're not going to make any progress in the conversation. That's just a waste of time. I literally get the same arguments when I go on to, so sometimes I'll go on this app, it's like Stereo or something. There'll be a lot of spiritualists on there, and I'll join their panels and ask them why they believe what they believe, and it's the same kind of thing. There's nothing of substance there. It's like just very platitude filled. Feel good about the way I'm talking. I never get that. Because if I had that, I would believe in so many things in my life.
I think the reason it's extra frustrating for me is that, he started off with this, do we have complete knowledge, which of course is nonsense. Nobody does. It's ridiculous. Do I have more knowledge of the Bible than Kevin? I don't know. Kevin might know the Bible way better than me. We'd have to take a test to find out. I really don't care. Because when I was a Christian, when I was a Southern Baptist fundamentalist Christian going to church, I knew the Bible less well than I do now. And I believed some of the same things that Kevin did, but I could still express them in a different way. I never went to, if you asked me, and we're not going to do this as a fun exercise, but I could put on my Jesus hat and tell you how and why I believed what I believed. It was bad reasons, but at least it was a sort of cogent argument or something that you could make sense of. It was never well, if you want to look at this story here and get it from a spiritual sense, you can go. It was like, there's so many fragmented thoughts in what Kevin says. And I genuinely, I'm not mad at Kevin. I'm not irritated. I don't want to beat him up. I don't know what his issues are, because it could be nerves. It could be, who knows? But all I know is that when I went forward, when I was a Christian, it's not my job to prove to you that God exists. That is for God to do through the Holy Spirit. My only job from the Great Commission is to share with you what I know about the gospel and the answers that I've received, so that the Holy Spirit can perhaps work through me to lead you to the one true risen Savior. Now, that sounds much clearer than what Kevin said. It's not backed up by any more evidence than anything Kevin said, but it is at least something you can grasp onto, because I'm not saying you need to understand this spiritually or that there's some argument or evidence behind it. It is absolutely God saves those who he will. That's it. It is salvation by grace through faith. That is my view from, when I was a Southern Baptist. That is so much easier to explain than either the pantheist stuff that Mike was calling in, or Kevin's really confused thing of, he thinks there's some hidden spiritual something to get out of the Bible, but he can't put it into words. And I know that's got to be really frustrating.
Well, you're using something that you don't have a basis for defending, and then having to use something else like a spiritual sense, which is a whole nother metaphysical claim that you haven't substantiated, in order to defend the claim that hasn't already been substantiated. It's just like, I don't see how you don't realize the issue with that. But
it reminds me of a debate I did recently, and not to beat up on Kenny again, but I will. And that is that, it was, is there good reason to believe in God? And Kenny's good reason for believing in God was to point to essence, which he couldn't define or demonstrate was even real. So his entire thing boiled down to, yes, there's a really good reason for believing in God, and it's this other thing that there's no good reason to believe in, and I can't demonstrate or prove. It's bizarre, because when you buy in, this shows, like I was saying earlier, about what is harmful about beliefs. Magical thinking is always harmful. Doesn't mean it's harmful all the time. It just means it can potentially be harmful. And so if you buy into a notion that is wrong, and it doesn't seem that on its own it has a problem, like the notion of essence, that there is something penny about a pen, or something human-y about a human that goes beyond its parts. There's something that transcends that. As soon as you buy into that notion, which in and of itself may not be harmful, it opens the door to everything else that you can base on it.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, that was a fun debate. I watched that. The essence thing is interesting. I feel like it commits you to non-existent things as well, but that's a whole boring.
He reached out to ask me if I'd come visit with him in his class at some point. He hasn't given me a date yet, but I said yes. I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that. We have another